Excellencies, friends of Tana, let me see how many of you were there at the first Tana. Just raise your hands. The first Tana. Okay. The second Tana. The third Tana. Okay, it's time for change. I'm Brian Tamuka Kagoro. I will be your, I won't say MC because those who study mental health have told me that MC means mental case. So I will be your program facilitator for today. The rule of Tana is you must not look too serious because not all of us are biologically gifted. So you may scare the cameras. Please smile. First, number one, Ethiopia is a happy place, so you should smile, okay? The second rule is the conversations have to be candid, have to be frank. And because all of you are so important, if we stick to your titles, by the time we are through addressing everybody as Dr. Al-Hajj, Excellency, Professor, the program would have ended. So I will do protocols at some stage. Once the protocols are done, you either say all protocols observed or standing on the existing protocols or respecting the existing protocols, right? Time is going to be very important. As they say in Malawi, time is very jealous. It doesn't matter how well you plan. Time always has a mind of its own. But because we're in Africa and talking about how to redeem things, how to have a renaissance, so we're going to have a programmatic renaissance of time, which means we know that some of you had long speeches, erudite exposés prepared. I'm going to beg you as we go forward, look, during the tea break, you can continue the expose, but whilst you're on stage, just try and keep it digestible. I'm not the host. I was asked to simply come and invite the host. Excellency, I've already called people excellencies, so you don't have to. Excellency, Dr. Gideon Timotheus, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. We came here because we were told you had a surprise for us. So we would like to invite you to please come and tell us what the surprise is, Minister, what the surprise is. And I came very highly expectant, so I know that you have a surprise for every delegate. Ladies and gentlemen, our host.
Good morning, everyone. I am as surprised as you are to hear that there is a surprise. But for those who do not know, the surprise might be that it is 2018 and not 2025 as far as we are concerned. And we insist that is the right calendar. Your Excellency, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the AU Commission, Your Excellency, Cristiano Chume, Minister of National Defense of Mozambique, Your Excellency, Joaquim Chissano, former President of Mozambique, Your Excellency, Dr. Joyce Hilda Banda, former President of Malawi, Your Excellency, Lassina Zerbo, former Prime Minister of Burkina Faso and acting chair of the Board of Governors of the Tana Forum, Your Excellency, State Minister Ali Omar, Foreign Minister of the Federal Republic of Somalia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't like to do the protocol more than this because our facilitator of programs has given strict instructions to do as little with protocol as possible, and I would observe that instruction. And I just want to say welcome to the 11th edition of Tana Forum. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you all, to have you all here in Addis. Tana Forum is a very critical and important platform for us all to come together and reflect on the issues of the day, both as a continent and globally. So as a people and government, we are very proud to be a host for this prestigious forum. As the Master of Ceremonies has said, I had a very, very long speech, but time is of the essence, and you are not here to hear speeches. You're here to take part in candid, frank conversations. So I'll end my remarks here, and I'll just say, እንኳን ደህና መጣችሁ፣ መልካም ቀን፣ መልካም ጊዜ. Thank you, everyone.
Since, at least the panelists, since the rest of you are not the host and the foreign affairs minister, and you see the example set, that means no pressure. I'm going to call His Excellency Lassina Zebo, the former Prime Minister of Burkina Faso, Chairman of the Rwanda Atomic Energy Board, and acting chairperson of the Tana Forum Board. Chair, at least maybe you will tell us the surprise.
Thank you, Program Facilitator, as you asked to call yourself. So good morning, everybody. I'm standing in here on behalf of President John Dramani Mahama, the President of Ghana, who has asked me to be acting chair and welcome you all to this forum. So His Excellency and dear brother, Dr. Gideon Timotheo, Foreign Minister of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Gustavo Schumer, Minister of National Defense of Mozambique, His Excellency Joaquim Chissano, former President of Mozambique, Excellency Dr. Joyce Hilda Banda, former President of Malawi, and in fact, when I was starting, I forgot my dear brother, the chairperson of the Africa Union, Mahmoud Ali, who's, when I was writing those notes, he wasn't in the room because I thought I would talk before, but my dear brother, forgive me for that. So welcome, and then indeed, you will do the keynote speech just now. So His Excellency, other brother, the Foreign Minister of Somalia, were talking just now. So good morning to everyone. We gather today here at a pivotal moment in our shared history. The world is not only changing, it is transforming. And we had it this morning during Samura Machel tribute. The foundation of the post-World War II system, from multilateral institutions to global security norms, are under a profound strain. The new power centers are emerging, alliances are being recalibrated, and decision-making spaces are increasingly contested. Africa stands then at a crossroads. We must decide whether to actively shape the transformation or merely endure its consequences. Our choices will be determined whether Africa becomes an actor of history or once again a theater for the ambitions of others. Because two strategic risks threaten Africa's long-term stability: marginalization and fragmentation. Marginalization risks placing Africa again as a chessboard for external strategies where our geography and natural wealth are instrumentalized for interest not our own. Fragmentation weakens our influence and dilutes our collective voice, making us vulnerable to manipulation and missed opportunities. We are witnessing this today across the continent: the turbulence in Sudan, insecurity in Eastern Congo, terrorism in the Sahel, and persistent instability in the Horn of Africa. The Sahel, in particular, remind us that instability is never isolated. Terror networks evolve, exploiting weak governance, climate pressures, illicit trafficking, and digital propaganda. Peace in the Sahel is not only a regional necessity, it is a continental imperative. Cyber threats intensify these vulnerabilities. Africa faces a battlefield without borders, where misinformation becomes a weapon, where our critical infrastructure is exposed to silent attacks. Cybersecurity must therefore be recognized as a central pillar of continental resilience. Yet, amid these risks lies a historic opportunity to build a modern Pax Africana, an African peace owned, defended, and sustained by Africans. The vision is not aspirational rhetoric. It is grounded in the African peace and security architecture, the African governance architecture, and the African free trade. Tools for sovereignty, transformation, and dignity. For Africa to seize this opportunity, three strategic imperatives must guide us. First, ownership and agency. Responding late to conflict is responding in vain. We must invest in preventive diplomacy, satellite surveillance, cybersecurity, frameworks, intelligence cooperation, and community-led peace solutions. We must address root causes: social exclusion, youth unemployment, and disinformation that erodes national cohesion. Three, economic transformation. Security without prosperity is fragile. Prosperity without security is unsustainable. Through industrialization, regional value chains, and technological innovation, the African Free Trade Framework is our engine to redefine Africa's global positions. We must champion a new multilateralism, not one of declaration, but one of responsibility and solidarity. A multilateralism where Africa does not ask for a seat, but where Africa brings its own chair. It is again this backdrop that we launch the State of Peace and Security Africa Report 2023-2024. And later you will realize that I'm doing my two-step in one to save time for our program manager. This report is more than an assessment. It is a warning bell and a call to action. It reveals that conflicts are transforming, becoming more fragmented, transnational, and digitally enabled. It warns that democratic aspirations are flattering, electoral manipulation, shrinking civic space, and growing distrust undermine social cohesion. It shows how geopolitical rivalry reshape African security, sometimes trading sovereignty for short-term stability. But this report is not a lament. It is a roadmap for reclaiming agency built on the following: local resilience, and African knowledge systems. The APSA, the AGA nexus delivering real protection and justice. Youth and women as engines of transformation, not spectators. Integration of cybersecurity and digital sovereignty into peace frameworks. A renewed African multilateralism grounded in accountability. Let this report challenge us to face uncomfortable truth, inspire us to safeguard our sovereignty, and guide us towards a peace rooted not only in the absence of war, but in dignity, justice, opportunity, and trust. Africa has two paths ahead. One leads to dependence, division, and decline. The other leads to sovereignty, unity, and leadership. The time for hesitation is over. The world is moving, and Africa must lead, not follow. The Tana Forum must remain a lighthouse for African-led solutions, a defender of our dignity, and a catalyst of continental ambition. And I want to thank, once again, the Foreign Minister, Dr. Gideon, for his leadership in finding a solution to host this 11th high-level Tana Forum. Thank you, Foreign Minister. So let us build together an Africa that is respected for its leadership, valued for its contribution, and empowered to define its destiny. Thank you. So I've done my second leg as well, so to save time. So I hope the program.
In African proverbs, they say that you will, if you have ever had to carry your own water from the river, you will know the worth of every drop. This continent is carried and held by our institution, the African Union Commission. Chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, I'm interested in knowing, since you took over, you have experienced the most unprecedented period of peace, no conflict on the continent, no problems at all. How do you sleep at night, and what might you want to share with us as your secret?
Excellence, Monsieur Timotheos Gideon, ministre des Affaires étrangères de l'Éthiopie, Excellence, Monsieur Lassine Azerbo, président en exercice du Forum de Tana, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les anciens chefs d'État, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, honorables académiciens, professeurs et analystes, Mesdames et Messieurs. Depuis plus d'une dizaine d'années, ce forum s'est distingué par sa permanence et sa vitalité. En effet, ce forum de Tana sur la sécurité cristallise deux enjeux importants. Le premier est d'ordre académique, celui d'institutionnaliser une réflexion théorique permanente, afin d'appréhender dans sa complexité la question sécuritaire telle que se présente sur notre continent. Il convient donc de saluer ici l'Institut des études de paix et de sécurité de l'Université d'Addis Ababa pour son initiative de mettre en place un forum. Conformément à la déclaration de la conférence de l'Union africaine, tenue en septembre 2009 à Tripoli en Libye, l'expression concrète de cette déclaration s'est accomplie dans le programme phare de l'Union africaine, faire taire les armes en Afrique, d'abord à l'horizon 2020 et ensuite à l'horizon 2030. Le second enjeu est d'essence politique. Le forum de Tana mobilise des décideurs de très haut niveau qui ont l'expérience de terrain. En alliant ces deux enjeux dans une combinaison heureuse et équilibrée, le forum se place à l'avant-garde de la réflexion. Une réflexion approfondie sur la dynamique de la problématique sécuritaire en Afrique. Cette année, le thème du forum porte sur l'Afrique dans un ordre mondial en évolution. Il faut dire tout de suite que cette évolution de l'ordre mondial se manifeste par un accroissement continu de la fragilité, une fragilité qui est devenue structurelle et mondiale. Au milieu de cette tempête d'incertitude générée pour l'essentiel, par les dysfonctionnements de la gouvernance mondiale, l'Afrique est trop souvent présentée comme la dernière frontière, la terre promise en raison des ressources de toutes sortes qu'elle détient, et qui la rendent de plus en plus attractive vis-à-vis des intérêts étrangers en quête de sources de ravitaillement, en matière de matières premières, si j'ose dire, et en marché. Quelle posture devra donc adopter l'Afrique dans cette évolution de l'ordre mondial qui tend vers plus de désorganisation? Your Excellencies, Africa should no longer limit its survival strategy to reflection sessions like this one. Of course, they are necessary, but they are no longer sufficient. They are necessary because action must be informed, upstream by conceptualization and analysis. They are not sufficient because reflections that are not embodied in the actions they have prepared remain fleeting, volatile, and lose their footing. The biggest problem facing Africa today is moving from reflection, often embodied in standards and declarations, to consistent actions that positively impact the lives of our populations. This is the profound meaning of Agenda 2063, the standard for the Africa we want. Reflection forums are multiplying and are held regularly, but the mirror of reality reflects a less than reassuring image. Thus, we are unable to silence the guns in 2020, unlike announced in 2013, during the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the OAU-AU in May 25, 2033. The time for action has once again been postponed to 2030. The new time frame that will coincide with the end of conflicts, wars, and crises on our continent. Will we succeed? We must hope so, with strength and faith. Except that 5 years before this new deadline, many indicators remain in the red and provide little reassurance about the possibility of an Africa without conflicts or crises by 2030. Of course, there is a positive narrative, that of achievements such as CFTA, the Africa CDC, and many others. Other such significant successes could have been achieved if conflicts and crises were definitely buried. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us now focus our attention and efforts on developing the modalities for effectively moving from theoretical reflection to concrete action on the ground. And this message is addressed first and foremost to me, my new team, the new commission, the special envoys, member countries, and all the peace-loving people in this room. Let us move, Your Excellencies, in developing these modalities for effectively transforming the theoretical reflection into concrete action on the ground. To do this, let us remember that joint action to be effective must be developed from a foundation of solid unity built on a strong commitment to shared values. This means that in a changing world, the only bulwark capable of protecting Africa from potential weakening is its unity, a unity forged in solidarity that is also evident in strong actions. I'll stop there for the sake of time, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Can you all say with me, another Africa is possible? But I need to, before I call the next panel, I need to tell you two things. I had a European friend. He was responsible for trade. And we were out at some American university, and he said to me he had been on a visit to one of our African countries, and he thought the problem with Africa was productivity. I said to him, why? He said, when he was walking, at around 8 or 10, he was going somewhere, he saw these women sitting under a tree. And they had to go back to their hotel. He saw the people still sitting under a tree. And then at lunchtime, he saw them sitting under the same tree. And at 4 p.m., he saw them sitting under the same tree. And he said, come on, Brian, I know you are a Pan-Africanist, but accept, man. If people work at that rate, there's no way they will catch up with the rest of the world. His name was Hiro. I said, Hiro, I imagine what those same peasant folks would think if they came to our meeting. They arrive at 8, they're finding us having tea and snacks. Then at 10, they come back, they find us having tea and snacks. At lunch, they find us having lunch, a sumptuous lunch. Then they come back at 3, they're finding us having our afternoon tea break. And at 5, they find us having another tea and snacks. I said, they will say, these are the laziest people on earth. Let me give you what happens in those women's lives. At 5 or 4 a.m., she left home having prepared kids to go to school. She went to the field. By the time you lazy folk woke up at 8, she had done 2 hours and was resting. When you saw them at lunchtime resting, it is because when it's sun up, it's almost impossible even for you to work in the sun. And at 3, they were taking their last break because they don't spend it on processed food. And they worked a little bit more before going home to prepare food. So friends, perspectives matter. Allow me to invite our high-level panel. Okay, I was telling you that in order to say, your program said there's a break, but I don't want the women in the village to say you are lazy. So we are going to go straight into the next session. Her Excellency Dr. Joyce Banda, the former president of Malawi and Tana Forum board member. Please help me welcome I think you all can be impressed that I still, even if I look rough, I still have some chivalry, you know. Allow me to invite His Excellency Joaquim Chissano, former president of Mozambique and AU High Representative for Western Sahara. Allow me to welcome our host, who set the stage and the example of using very few words, His Excellency Dr. Gideon Timotheus. So let me explain what will happen. We're going to have hard talk. Anything they say cannot be quoted on Twitter because it's Tana. But in this conversation, we're going to have a conversation first. I'm going to have a conversation with them, and we will open for the rest of the floor for interaction. I need 2 wicked timekeepers, one on that end, one on this end. The first section, we're going to take no more than 25 minutes to frame the conversation, and then we're going to have conversations with you, and then take another 20 minutes for them to wrap up. Is that okay? Thank you so much. Why don't you turn to your neighbor and say hard talk? President Chisano, I don't want to sit to your right because I know ideologically this will be dangerous. Friends, confirm if you can hear me. While the world is facing various uncertainties as described by the chairperson of the board, as well as our host and the chairperson of the AUC, and these uncertainties are wide-ranging, from politics to economy to technology, multilateral institutions, international law. Africa needs to remain not only anchored, Africa needs to remain not only anchored on its vision of Pan-Africanism, of regional technology can be adjusted. I think it needed me to hold something. So Africa needs to remain focused on the future. And this conversation is about not an African victim. This conversation is about an Africa that is agency, that's assertive, an Africa that's focused on solutions. President Chisano, I'll start with you. In August 2004, in your last address as head of state in Grand Bay, Mauritius, as you were addressing your fellow heads of state, you gave a wide-ranging speech, but you focused specifically on the imperative of adaptive leadership leadership that can adapt to the changing times. You focused on peace and security, but specifically the need for Africa to take leadership of Africa's own peace and security. And you focused on trade and the economy. At the time, you reflected, because you were in SADC, on how inter-regional trade was important. And then in your reflections on how we relate with the rest of the world, you emphasized leadership, partnership, and not a subordinate role. So I'll start with you. Leadership, partnership, and Africa not being subordinate, but coming to the party, bringing something to the party. When you look at the world today, with the state of multilateralism, with the state of the world economy, with the polarization, in your view, what are the three things that Africa can do in order to show leadership on peace and security, on economy, and in reshaping multilateralism?
Hello? Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to correct one thing. I was introduced as the special envoy of the chairperson of the African Union to Western Sahara. I corrected that. I was. I am no longer. Is it not true? Well, where is the chair? I was.
So,
I'm no longer.
Mr. President, I note you are the only person who does not want titles you don't deserve. We have many people who are accepting undeserved titles. So that's a good sign of leadership.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I don't remain committed. I think that the people of Western Sahara deserves self-determination and independence. I'm saying this being a good friend also of the Moroccan people and some of their leaders. But we need that. As for your three points. It's very hard to establish 3 points without remembering other points. So what I'm going to say is not for the exclusion of other important things. But one first thing is that although nowadays we started to know each other in Africa, we still don't know each other enough. That's why each country is still thinking on its own affairs without involving the interests of the whole of Africa. It reminds me of Nepal. We found that it was a very good initiative. And those 3 or 4 presidents who wrote books which led us to the creation of Nepal had done a good job, excellent. And one of the things which we were told was that Nepal meant new partnership for development of Africa. And I had to put the question during a meeting of the executive committee which was created, implementation committee, chaired by President Obasanjo. I said, why do we call it a new partnership? What is new in that? What is new? And what was new, even then, was that Africa was resolved to get together and use as much as possible, as maximum as possible, its own resources to work jointly for development. But it did not take long that I saw African leaders queuing to the G7 to ask for help, to other institutions outside Africa. We spoke a lot about INGA. We spoke a lot about the corridors. Even today, this morning, it was mentioned, the corridor of Beira to Zimbabwe, the corridor of Maputo to South Africa, the corridor of Nacala to Malawi, the corridor of Mtwara. Those corridors were established in order to respond to this appeal to work together. And there were many other initiatives in West Africa. But soon they did not materialize. So that call to work together, because we know each other, because we trust each other, and then that is the second point, is to reinforce our trust of each other. We know each other and we trust each other. So we would start to do business among ourselves. Yeah, let me tell you one story. If I start telling many stories, maybe we'll not finish. But let me tell you this story. When SADC was created as a SADC with double C, the heads of state of Tanzania and Zambia and others decided that we would have a barter system for our trade because we had no money. And but one of the ministers failed to buy the goods from the other country. And the other country was in debt with the country of that minister. And the head of state of the second country went to that minister's country, president, said, I apologize because I owe you, and because I could not buy enough from you. And that was Samora Machel then. Yes, and that the other president said, Samora, you owe me nothing. What I know is that my minister preferred to go and buy the same goods from London because the cost was only a few cents different, and there it was cheaper for few cents. And they forgot that then we had to send hard currency abroad. And so our barter system is not working because not everybody understands. Second example, when COMESA was created, Mozambique said, no, we are not going to join COMESA because no one buys anything from us, but all use these corridors to transit from there, Rwanda, from Uganda, from Kenya. They cross all these corridors. And so we are wanted just because of that. So we are not going to be members of COMESA. And I remember that we produced a commodity which a country needed very much. And when the commodity was ready, because we had a factory there, maybe the only one in Southern Africa for that commodity, when it was finished, they were no longer interested. They went to another country up north to buy. This is a lack of knowledge, trust. These are things which we need. And the other point which I may say here is that we had a doctor who was from Bulgaria during the struggle for independence, who was in a hurry to see things happen. And he was right, and so he was telling toward the leadership that I hear you meet and meet and meet. You decide, and decide. But in practice, we see nothing. So here, OAU Summit, we're speaking, and they go back home. We come and we have the same presentation, the same discussion. We go back home. So we meet, we decide, but we don't implement. I gave the example of NEPAD. Where is NEPAD? What are we delivering? I'm saying all these things from experience because when I was foreign minister, I toured the whole of West Africa, especially the French-speaking countries, to try to attract them to come and know Southern Africa. I swear, the most part of them, almost all of them, started knowing Mozambique only in 2003, when I became chairman of the African Union. And some of them never came back again. And so we are having countries from Middle East, from the East, coming to do business with us, while the Kenyans here are good in tourism, while the Ethiopians here are good in tourism, they're good in many other things, construction, the water, sanitation, climate, many things. Even in the new technologies, Kenya and Ethiopia are there. We are starting to see them. I'm happy because I'm starting to see them around. Some contacts are being made, but this is still very far. We want to be ourselves, to solve our own problems, but we have to be together to be able to solve our own problems.
Thank you, sir.
Well, these are the 3 points.
Thank you, sir. President Joyceman. President Chisano says, and you know the joy of being MC, you can paraphrase, rephrase, and misphrase. And you do so with impunity. Huh? President Chisano says, look, and the chairperson of the AUC said the same. We talk, we resolve. We talk, we resolve. But when it comes to actually doing, there's not enough doing. We set up institutions that are supposed to offer solutions, we abandon them, and we set up new ones. And then we don't know each other enough or trust each other enough, but we talk about unity. I'm going to ask you for your 3 solutions, but I want to add a little bit something. As an African woman, and you have been campaigning for women's leadership in the economy, in politics, in the economy, and in environmental matters. You've also been campaigning for next generation leaders, like getting younger leaders involved. When you are looking at your 3 solutions, where do you situate the progress we've made on the leadership of women in the economy? Not just leadership, influence, ownership, and in security. Not just women being invited, but being part of the table in mediation, being part of the table in offering. Have we made progress? If not, what would be the solutions you give us? Your 3 solutions first, then my last question. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm pleased to be back to Tana. I come a long way. I think 8 years ago I attended Tana, and in that meeting we were talking about natural resources of Africa. And in that message of mine, I said leadership is a love affair. You must love the people you serve, and the people must fall in love with you in return. And this morning I heard most inspiring speeches talking about how that was in the past. In fact, our South African scholar said, I even remember with nostalgia how people used to be in the past. And allow me so to give my 3 solutions in the simplest ways, and indeed as an African woman. And I mean no offense. When I talk about this, I am a champion at COPE. I'm a climate justice champion. So I go into a little bit of history to bring in the context. In 1884, Africa was divided. And in 1884, people didn't know how rich this continent is. 100 years, we lost a lot of our raw materials. And this is a fact, a painful fact, but one we must confront. Fast forward 2025. Now we know that Africa is the richest continent on the planet. In fact, now, as it turns out, even countries that didn't know had the precious had minerals now know that they have. We have watched helplessly how we have lost a lot of our natural resources through illicit movements and other things. Now we know that each country on the continent of Africa has resources, either developed or not developed. In the case of Malawi, they have just told us we have the highest deposits of rutile in the world. Now, I say all this to take all that into context, to say, now that we are here, but we know better. Now that we are here, we find that 60% of our people are young people. Young people without jobs and without opportunities. It is incumbent upon us as leaders to ensure that we remind ourselves all the time that the resources that we have on the continent don't belong to us, they belong to the people we serve. They are God-given gifts. At the same time, 80% of Africans are living in abject poverty. My late President Bingu Mutharika used to say, it is not Africa that is poor, it is the people that are poor. So for me, I had accepted to come to this meeting so that I can recommend a few things that we can do. Because we know that the deposits, the resources we have are not mine, belong to the people. But we also must remember that most of the conflicts on the continent, now I think when I checked today, it's 50 conflicts on the continent alone. And some of them are initiated or interfered with by foreign entities. And we are losing now up to $150 billion through illicit movements. So what is it that we can do to make sure that we have peace on the continent? Because most of the conflicts on the continent are originating from the frustration on the part of the 60% who find themselves without jobs and without opportunities, and our leaders then looking the other way. What is it that we can do? Number one, in my opinion, we must have an all-inclusive approach. We must ensure that the young people on the continent are engaged. We see a lot of our young people going to South Africa, ending up in xenophobic attacks. But when you look closely, even the young people in South Africa don't have opportunities. So it is incumbent upon every leader on the continent of Africa to make sure that there's the political will to create opportunities for young people, one, so that they don't move to the next country to be abused, or they don't cross the Mediterranean, and to ensure that the young people get opportunities to stay home and develop their countries. I would also like to recommend that in our effort to develop our continent is for us to take charge of our destiny. And for that to happen, everybody must be on board. And that includes women. Women must not be left out. We have seen a lot of improvement on the continent, and I have said everywhere that our women are doing better than most. Our continent is doing better than most countries. Yeah, when we have had 7 presidents that are female so far, and a lot of women are occupying positions of leadership across. There are countries that have deliberately decided that they will appoint 50% of women, their cabinets. In the case of Malawi, it's 42%. So we are doing fine, but we could do better than that. Women must get involved. But I think most importantly, it's for young men and women, the youth, to feel that they are part of the solutions of their countries. They're sitting at the policy formulating tables, and to ensure that women are going all the way to parliament. Women are decision makers, and women are making laws. But for the past 2 years here at African Union, we have also been advocating for inclusion of women in mediation delegations. We have made progress. We have had a very peaceful election in Malawi. We attribute that to the support that African Union, Commerce, and SADC have given in ensuring that they build capacity of the Peace Commission at FEMWA is here. In Malawi, they went all the way to grassroots to sensitize people. And I mean, there was not one single person dead. It was very peaceful. And I think there's so much that we can continue to do in that. Finally, I would like to ask that it is very important for African Union through the regional economic commissions to say that, and the eminent committee of elders, when we sense that there's conflict emerging in country X, to act decisively and quickly. We have seen examples where the conflicts that we see, and we begin to run around at the end of the day when things have gone so bad and so many people are dying, could have been prevented. And somebody has said to me, sometimes it is because of resources that our own organization, African Union, depends on member states contributing money to African Union in order for them to go on for peacekeeping and peacemaking. As for the inclusion of women, yes, we are making progress. I've just been appointed to mediate in Madagascar, but there's so much more that we can do. And including young people on those delegations will also be very important. We have just told SADC that before I go to Madagascar, we must have 1 or 2 young people on the delegation. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, leaders, now my fellow leaders, sitting in the state houses, they need to listen to the voices of the young people. The young people have been screaming for so long for opportunities. They are speaking to us, and when we ignore them, they are meeting at the marketplace, and they can come up with leaders at the marketplace. And before you know it, you are not in the State House yourself. So paying attention to what our young people want and need is extremely important. And they must have space at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, Mr. Gideon, you know, 1963, May, the first resolution of the OAU had an 8-point agenda. Number 1 was to deal with multilateral reform. Africa should have a seat at the Security Council. You can Google as I speak. It's actually the first resolution that Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, and co. Number 2, setting up an Africa Liberation Committee that would be hosted, I think, in Tanzania. Number 3, decoupling African economies from being tethered to former colonial power economies. Number 4, looking at increasing trade, inter-regional trade. Number 5, the social agenda, which included, amongst other things, health, education, and etc. Number 6, addressing the cultural question, including setting up Pan-African University, Pan-African media, and etc. Right? 1963. I'm not sure how old you were in 1963. I was thinking to myself, just seeing your energy, listening to your foresight, 1963, we wanted Africa to be represented in the UN Security Council. We have reached a point now where those who founded that architecture, the multilateral system, have begun dismantling it. And everybody is saying we need a new global financial architecture, we need a new global security architecture, we need a global. So there is a consensus, albeit not agreement, as to how to do it. Sitting where you are sitting, and you are imagining African leadership, we have the Ezulwini framework, consensus. When you look at us as Africa, are we fit for purpose to lead where others have failed? And if we are not, what will it take? Number two, do we take our own institutions seriously? I'll give you a little bit why I'm putting you in this tricky position. We set up the Africa Monetary Fund, the Africa Statistics Bureau, Africa this and this, and then we went to the Europeans and others and said, please give us money so that we can finance these things so that we can be independent from you. I mean, this is the first time. Then we set up Africa Mining Vision, Africa Mining Development Center. Then we go to the same people, hey, we're sick and tired of you exploiting our natural resources. We want our own liberation. So give us money so that we can set up something, so that we are free from you and we can charge you optimum prices. Then I could go on and on. Do we lack seriousness, or it is simply, as President Chisano said, we don't know enough of each other? What will it take, sir? I mean, you are Foreign Affairs Minister, we discuss. We are at a serious place globally. We're seeing militarization, global north, global east, global spending more on military than anybody else. At the same time, our countries are deeply in debt because of skewed credit rating. We are charged more for borrowing. And basically, it looks like everybody is committed to maintaining the 1940s division of labor, or Berlin division of labor, where we only export raw materials and we import beneficiated goods. So looking at the fact that we have all the Africa Agenda 2063, we have all the visions. Since you are smarter than the MC, sir, what are those 3-4 practical things that we can do to move from, as the chairperson of the AU said, from talk to action, transformation, and leadership?
Thank you very much. I will start by saying that I have saved for myself a lot of time from the speech earlier. So I would have some latitude in terms of making my point. Let me start by saying that if we want to see action, progress, real, tangible deliverables, we have to acknowledge the limitations of politics and politicians. Africa's prosperity, Africa's progress cannot be delivered by foreign ministers, statesmen, or political figures. They have an important role to play, the state, society, but at the end of the day, the real determinant will be the economy. And in the economic space, we can't expect European, American, or Chinese investors and companies to be very altruistic and calm and say we are going to add value here, we are going to add value to your resources and pay taxes and do this and that. We have to empower this generation of entrepreneurs, businessmen and women, African corporations, to invest in African countries and to usher in an era of integration and investment. And I will give you a few examples. My favorite example is Ethiopian Airlines, an indigenous local corporation owned and operated completely by Ethiopians, and establishing partnerships in various parts of the continent, adding value, and creating wealth as well. When we opened our private sector, particularly in the financial sector, we envisaged that Kenyan or Nigerian financial institutions or South African financial institutions that are more advanced than ours would come and invest. We have already experienced in this regard Kenyan telecom operators coming and investing in Ethiopia. Akilo Dangote, a famous Nigerian entrepreneur, launching the process to establish one of the biggest fertilizer plants in our continent here in Ethiopia. So I think this is the model that we should adopt to enhance our economic standing, to bring about prosperity. And it is only when we have the economic clout that our aspirations to play a bigger role globally would be taken seriously. Otherwise, we might have all the resolutions and declarations in the world, finely crafted, finely worded, but they wouldn't have any clout, any juice behind them. So for me, it is important that we invest in each other's economy, that we foster and promote economic integration, and we also invest in the capacity of the youth, taking into account the technological advancement and disruption that is afoot. If we should be pragmatic, but at the same time very ambitious. This century is proving to be more and more the Asian century, but we can make sure that by the end of this century, it will be the dawn of the African century. In terms of demographic trends, things to be going in our favor. And there are technological disruptions that we could capitalize upon to ensure that in the next century, Africa will be the driver of global growth, innovation, and productivity. But in order to do that, we need to invest on our infrastructure right now. We need to invest on the capacity, the education, and the skill of our youth. And we need to seriously think about not just artificial intelligence, but advances in bioengineering, quantum computing, and technologies that will enter into the market 30, 40 years down the line. And the more we focus on that, and the less summits, the less talk shop and conventions we have, the better our prospects would be. Thank you.
Well, so just before I come to the floor, let me just ask each of you, I'll start with you, Minister. So we now know that some of what we are recommending as AI, or at least as tech advancement, will consume 4 to 5 times more water than the water consumption is high. Number 2, data warehousing. Most of the data being produced by African public sector is warehoused by companies in Europe, in America, in Asia. And data is the new gold, or data is the new gold. When you're looking at this struggle over data, what would you propose as a solution? Because we can make greater use of technology, be more adept at it, but we are still using technologies that are owned by other people. So the related question is, in terms of ownership of the technologies that we use, even as we take a pragmatic we use, but don't become overly dependent on use of foreign technologies. And relatedly, President Chisano, your last address to SADC, you were hopeful about elections. You were hopeful that we now had the normative framework for elections. Now, it looks like elections have become a flashpoint that leads to what my colleagues at the African Union call unconstitutional changes of government. In fact, between rigged elections and militaries, the youth seem to be trusting a little bit more the militaries than they are the electoral processes. It is so bad that even the soldiers have begun to believe that taking over power in a particular way is the alternative to democracy. So I'll ask you for your comments on that, on what can be done. And then, Madam Joyce Banda, you know, when you look at the companies listed on the stock exchanges, the 5 major stock exchanges in Africa, the equity value that are held by the indigenous or the local people is in South Africa less than 5%. In a significant number of the countries, it is still less than 12%. And in that, the equity value attributable to women is 0.001%, which means when you look at women within African economies, women produce almost 80% of the food we eat, but their control and ownership of land, of factories, and etc. is still way behind, even in countries that have reached 50% women in cabinet. When you go to the economy, it's still way behind. Just on the economy, looking at women and youth, what would be your solution, given that now we are more and more selling off everything to externals? So I'll start with you, Minister, on the data sovereignty and technology sovereignty.
Thank you very much. I think the first important thing is to understand the significance of the resources that we have in terms of data. More and more young people in the continent are online, generating content, generating a lot of data. And what that means, how it could be used, how it could be utilized for good and bad. I think the first important thing is for policymakers to have a really good grasp of that. And then we could figure out how we could leverage the amount of data we are generating so that it could benefit us more than it benefits others. And in this regard, one of the things that we could do is share our resources, pool our resources to establish regional data centers. I mean, if Ethiopia or Somalia or Djibouti or Sudan try to establish each of us our own separate large-scale data centers, it could be quite expensive. But if we could pool our resources, there is an economy of scale that we could benefit from. And being a continent of the Nile, being a continent of the Congo River, and similar great water bodies, we have the resources to generate the energy for data processing. We have the resources to establish large-scale data centers. So we are positioned in such a way that we could utilize these emerging technologies in a much better way than in the past. I mean, this could be the new industrial revolution. And when the train leaves the station, we can't be on board. But we have to think about it very carefully. We have to invest together. We have to understand that we have a common destiny. Ethiopia by itself or Kenya by itself, we can only go so far. But if we collectively deploy our resources, there is a lot that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. President, Son. Well, we were very much happy when we saw that the coup d'etats were decreasing in Africa after our resolution in the African Union that we would not tolerate taking power through unconstitutional means. I have been sent to Madagascar to try and mediate because there was an act of taking power by unconstitutional means, which was not called coup d'etat. It appears that the military did not intervene, but it seems that military had something to do with it. It took a long time to mediate, and we thought that, well, now we have, for Madagascar, they have learned their lesson. But today, we see that again, there were marches in the streets in order to topple the president who had initiated that process of taking power through inconstitutional means. So this means that we need to find a way of dialogue on a permanent basis about the misdeeds, but also about the possible solutions to this problem. And this is what I'm happy that we are trying to do that in Mozambique. There is this national inclusive dialogue, national and inclusive dialogue, which I hope will be permanent. Not a dialogue to criticize each other, to point fingers to the other, but to try to find real solutions. What can unite us? Because we are all learning. In the West, democracy is not perfect. We have seen what happened in the United States of America in 2 occasions or 3 occasions. We have seen that even there, which was the reference of democracy, things didn't work. So they need to streamline the processes of democracy. In Africa, we have also to continue to try and create strong institutions. But to do that, we have to dialogue with the whole population. The whole population, the people. And we must cease looking at the people as if we were not part of that people. We must be part of that people, but what remains is that we have to go from the top and sit at the same level with those whom we call people. So we are people. So the elections need peace. Peace needs development, needs decrease or an elimination of absolute poverty, at least but poverty must be eliminated in a longer term, but as quickly as possible. So, to speak about elections, democratization, without speaking about development, it's something which puts us behind, puts us always at the periphery. I'm glad to notice that in Mozambique, when we became independent, we had one small university, which was mainly for the Europeans, for the colonizers. And today, we can speak about 50 universities, including state universities and private universities. We need now to have a curricula of good quality which creates what we aspired when we became independent. We wanted to create a new man with new mentality. And I think, again, we cannot do it in isolation. In this global world, we suffer from copying from our masters up to date. We have to have forums and take subject by subject and think how we can develop it on the lines of our culture, because the cultures in Africa are similar, at least. They are not the same. Even in one country, they are not the same, but are similar, and we can understand better. We spoke here about women and children, and women and youth. I would add to that we should think about the children from the babyhood. They must grow in an environment of peace. It's a very difficult problem to solve, an issue which is very difficult because we, the parents, we are spoiled already. And to think about that peace, the real peace, to communicate it to our children, it's very difficult. But I think it's good to try, instead of leaving our children to grow with just with the internet. Because I have a grandson of 4 years to 5, and is always with the computer, with the what you call cell phone, and reading what comes from outside. And we don't have our own thing to transmit our culture to our children, to transmit this culture of peace. We still have children growing in the school from the first classes, fighting each other to see who fights better, imitating what they see in these cell phones. And none of those things have got our culture, the African culture. So we have to.
So sir, let me stop you there to hear Madam President.
Okay.
And I've been cautioned that I need to hear the floor, otherwise I'll never get this job again.
Okay.
Since I'm an unemployed youth and job security is important.
Okay. Yeah, I said at the beginning here that you asked for 3 points, but the points are interrelated.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to stop in one point. if we want to solve the problems of Africa. Yes. Madam.
Thank you very much. You asked me about how we can build millionaires and billionaires that are female.
Thank you. Somebody said patriotic female bourgeoisie.
Yeah, I believe that we lag behind because of, in some of our countries, because of traditions and the laws that were there. There are countries where a woman could not go to the bank to borrow money alone. I myself founded an organization of business women that I ran for 10 years, and I know the challenges that women face. So first and foremost, we must take the route that politicians have taken. There was a time where we didn't think that women could end up in cabinet or in leadership. There was something called affirmative action. There are some countries that said, unless you must have 30% of your cabinet being women, we must have 30% of women in cabinet, in parliament. We must find ways of ensuring that there's deliberate efforts by governments to make sure that women have access to finance to do business as well. This far, yes, we have organizations in our countries that are doing microfinance. We go to Bangladesh, we learn one or two things, we come back. That's not what we are talking about. We've passed that stage as African women. We also want to be included at the very top of the economic structures of our countries. For that to happen, then it must be political will on the part of governments and banks to make sure that women have access to equal opportunities to get finance for business. But secondly, it is also important for us to make sure that our women are going to school, that they are educated, that those that go into business have gone to school and are educated and can push for their rights and can push for finance as well and can push for business opportunities, can enter into partnerships with men or bigger companies. I said this because when I started the National Association of Business Women in Malawi, it was discovered that in that organization, only 19% of the women had gone beyond primary school. And the rest of those that had gone to college went to work. They didn't go into business. We have had to change that status quo. Now, a lot of women that have gone to school, that are graduates, go into business. Those are the ones that can go into the bank to negotiate for loans. Secondly, I would like to agree with the minister. Even in business, we need to allow ourselves to get into partnerships with the business women in your country, but also across the border. There's no reason why Malawian women cannot do business with Tanzanian women or Zimbabwean women. It is only when we put our resources together and work together that we will grow our businesses. We should also I should also emphasize that if we insist on doing things for women to get into business, women to grow their businesses, then we are talking to ourselves. We need to work with our men in our countries. We have found that African men, they open up, they give support to women. We are able to participate in leadership because they have opened the space at the policy formulating tables for us to work together. The same can happen in business. We can work together. We don't need to isolate ourselves. That's what I could say.
Thank you. Please give my three panelists a pom-pom. So what I'm going to do, you all know that I grew up in a country called the Democratic Republic of Zimbabwe. So the process is going to be guided. This is not authoritarianism or dictatorship. It is efficient transaction. So what we will do is we will take two from this side, 1 minute each, two from this section, two from here, 2 from the middle section, 2 from there, this section, and then I think 1 from you guys. So I'm going to go from the left. Dr. Rukato, now I've got 3. I've got Excellency, then Dr. Rukato, and then David. Please just keep it 1 minute each, yeah. Excellencies, I'll ask that you just note. You don't have to answer all the questions. Micro.
My question is directed at the Honorable Minister. Yesterday, as we were leaving this place to our hotel, we were all excited about how different Addis is looking from 10 years ago. My question is, practically, what are you doing different to make the changes that we are seeing today? And also, people were hoping that the changes are across the country, not just in Addis. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellency.
Thank you very much. I just want to say.
Excuse me, just hold on. They want to know what is Ethiopia doing differently to make sure that Addis is looking different from what it was 10 years ago, and that she hopes that these changes are not just Addis-centric, they are across the country.
Yes, I'd like to ask President Chisano that because 10 years ago I was invited to a Swedish fundraising for called Peace Parks, and this was mainly for to fundraise for animals who are suffering from conflicts in Africa because they are displaced and they are trying to bring them back to their own places. So I want to, from this place, I want to do a fundraising, an African fundraising for the displaced women and children who have been displaced in conflicts in Africa, whether it is in Sudan or also in Palestine, because there has been many women and children who have been forcibly displaced from their homes, and now we need to send, like after the conflict is over, they need to go back to their homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. David, please, I'll ask that you raise your voice slightly.
I'll try. My name is David Munyai. I'm the director for the Center for Africa-China Studies at University of Johannesburg. I think my question is follow-up from my sister, the very first one. I was also in the famous bus from this place to the hotel. And to the minister, I'll be more specific. I'm more familiar with the city. I remember the days when lights were and energy switched on and off. And I'm so impressed. Congratulations for the work that you're doing to keep the lights 24 hours on, which is a rare on the continent situation. What lesson, since you sit in the same cabinet, in terms of what you did on the dam, and what lessons would you give to your fellow cabinet members across, particularly in Southern Africa, in reference to Inga Dam? Not going to IMF, not bringing all these experts, and able to do it on the African continent. What exactly should be done? And how do you envisage the dam and in bringing peace in the region, in line with the NEPAD process in terms of the continental power grid. Thank
Thanks,
you.
David. Now we come to this section, the section, the powerful section. No questions. This is beautiful. This section, one question. The gentleman at the yeah, there, right there. Yeah.
My name is Parkway C. Heto from Soka University of America. My question has to do with something that was said earlier about knowing ourselves. How do we know ourselves when it's difficult to travel on the continent? There are some countries that they've made progress by allowing us to have visa on arrival, but they still only give us single entry visas, right? So there are so many other barriers to knowing ourselves. How can we, or what concrete steps can we take to actually resolve that, to encourage this, process of knowing ourselves?
Thank you. My sisters at the back, two sisters right at the back.
Thank you. I was also in the famous bus, but my question is not around electricity. Mine is from the morning we heard about leadership, and the fact is the selection in which we do our leadership, which is elections, is not working.
Sorry, my sister,
Yes.
do you have a name?
Yes, I do. My name is Cynthia Chigwenya. I am not affiliated to any institution. My question is, how do we go about selecting our leaders? Is there a method in which we can imagine a very context-specific way in which we choose our representatives when it comes to democracy? Should we continue holding elections, and what does a specific, context-specific method of electing our representatives look like? Thank you.
And the sister next to you?
Thank you very much. My name is Mpula Kheti. I would like to thank Your Excellency Dr. Joyce Banda for bringing to the fore issues around young people and mentioning them. That's quite commendable. I would, however, like to recommend that we take the conversation further than mentioning what the issues young people are having and talking about concrete, decisive action. We know what the issues are. How do we solve them? The reason why I'm saying this is because we run the risk of now creating slogans around the issues young people face and what needs to be done. We've been talking about it for the past 20 years, that youth need to be included, youth need to be empowered, but how? How do we do that? How do we create those commitments? And how do we compel our leaders, our governments into taking those real commitments towards young people? Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll move to the next section. My apologies, you are sitting in the wrong section. You should have come to this section where they had no questions. Okay, wow. Okay, my sister in a white, the brother in a gray suit behind you, the gentleman raising the white paper, yeah.
All right, great. Thank you very much. I'm Rosa Sagai from Ethiopian Artificial Intelligence Institute. Since in the panel discussion there were discussion on technology, I would like to have one question on the technology.
Rosa,
yes.
I am the youngest of the people on the stage. Yeah?
Okay.
I think you are somewhat fast.
All right.
So if your batteries allow, if you slow down a little bit, we might, yeah, thank you.
All right, I just want to use my 1 minute. Okay. In the panel discussion, there was a discussion on the technology, so I would like to have one question from that perspective. Ethiopia, in 2020, we have established Ethiopian Artificial Intelligence Institute to provide AI solution for different sectors, specifically by identifying different problems. So this means Ethiopia is taking the lead to produce AI technology instead of being a consumer of foreign technology or foreign tools. So what kind of trend the other African countries are following to use this technology in different sectors? Maybe we can specifically take as an example the peace and security. Since we have a representative from Malawi and Mozambique, I would like to hear their experience on this. Thank you.
Sir, yes, the one in a suit.
Thank you very much for the floor. My name is Vianney Bissimo. I'm the Africa Director of Civic. My question is, how can African leaders be accountable to each other, despite this argument of national sovereignty? Thank you.
Okay, the question was, how can African leaders be accountable to each other and not hide behind the cloak of national sovereignty?
Good afternoon. My name is Hamid Nuru. I'm with the World Food Programme, the representative to the African Union. The biggest issue we see in the African continent today, and this question is directed to President Chisano, by the way, happy birthday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I just Googled it, and also to,
This man. I thought when I said there was a surprise, everyone would know that His Excellency turned 50, yeah? Thank you.
And also to Dr. Banda as well. Conflict on the continent is destroying Africa. Conflicts can be man-made or natural. Climate change, Ebola, COVID, that one we can understand. But man-made conflict between 2 or 3 people conflicting with each other, we need to go beyond the stage of just saying we strongly condemn in the possible means, against. It needs to move to the next stage. What can you tell us that we can do to make sure that we engage that next stage to make it more accountable? Especially really looking at food security. $60 billion was spent last year importing food into Africa for that food that we can produce here in Africa. Yet more than $2 trillion has been spent on importing arms and drones to kill ourselves here. Something needs to be changed. What do we do to push this forward? Thank you.
My 2 sisters at the back, that section. Yes, the one in blue.
Thank you. Dzvinka Kachur from Ukrainian Association of South Africa. The facilitator has mentioned that since 1963, African continent was advocating for UN Security Council reform. What is the current vision? Do you think there is enough leadership, especially in this critical time in the world, to continue this reform? And what could be this consensus on the continent for UN Security Council reform?
Okay. I'm telling you, because I can see my colleagues who are training me from the feminist collective there. So if I keep saying only to the female participants, please raise your voice, it may look like patriarchy. So to all participants, please raise your voice.
Okay, thank you. My name is Fenet Johannes, and I came from Addis Ababa University. So I'm probably one of the youngest here. And thank you all for being here, panelists and moderator. As a political science and international relations graduating class student, I would like to ask firstly, Madam Chisano, a few questions. One, sorry for the...
It's okay, you are young, you can say anything you want.
Yes, and I can, sorry for the mistake. And as a representative, or as I can represent the women and the youth side, so I would like to ask a question that since these days, the women, especially women, are represented in are not represented fully, and just for the quota, it's a quota-driven representation, I would say. In universities, I see our professors, and also outside in organizations, it's more like a quota-driven representation. It's not a genuine empowerment, I would say. And what structural or policy shifts could there be in this political arena or in this in this situation, rather than just giving affirmative actions. We just need some substantive and transformative change. So any structural or policy shifts you would suggest, and especially in where the youths are, where the women are in universities and organizations. Thank you.
I'm afraid I really would like to have as many of you speak as possible. My small dilemma is that we have a lot of high-level guests that we had said they would come and speak earlier, and because of the slight delay, this particular session is going to continue during the lunch break. Please find the speakers when they are eating, when they've just finished eating, and ask your question. That's how it will continue. And then when we are asking for a selfie, please also throw in your question. And that way we will be able to conclude all the unanswered questions. But for now, what I'm going to do, there were general questions around Ethiopia explaining how it has done what it has done and the lessons. And there were questions around leadership. How do we select? How do we identify? How do we come up with leaders? We're talking about an era that requires transformative leadership. Are elections the best way of finding transformative leaders? Are there other ways? And then there was the questions around, sometimes you get overseas, they're fundraising to take care of a problem in Africa. How can this be done here, and what kind of support, what kind of frameworks would be there? And then there were questions around knowing ourselves and how this links to freedom of movement on the continent. And I guess it will speak to questions of infrastructure as well. And then, of course, concrete decisions that go beyond slogans on the how, and this idea of producing AI and tech instead of being a consumer, but looking at some of the examples of how that is being done, the sort of investments, and then how do African leaders actually hold each other to account so that you're not waiting for outsiders. You will note, I deliberately stayed away from the C word, the corruption word, because I knew once we talk about corruption, we need 2 other sessions, right? And then there was the last questions around man-made conflict, right? This idea that conflict has all these other downstream, upstream, side stream impacts, food insecurity, that the continent somehow, you spend a lot of money importing weapons, drones, and yet you still import food. That's money you could invest. There were other questions. What I'm going to suggest, Excellencies, is just take 2 minutes, take your favorite question, the one you want to answer the most. And then for the rest, Minister, I saw that you came with some officials from the ministry. Please, officials from the ministry, volunteer to answer the rest of the questions that cannot be canvassed during this session. And for President Chisano, there are many questions. I think I need to arrange a dedicated Tana for you to come and answer this question about leadership failure and possibility in Africa. But for now, I think I'll just say maybe 2-3 minutes and we wrap up. Madam President, we'll start with you. Minister, since you ceded your time earlier, we'll end with you.
I picked one question that was asked on youth, and I think it's the lady is still in the room. Yes, I share your concern. I think you're tired. You think that those over my age, we just talk to gain popularity, but you can count on me as a good friend of young people. So for you to know that this is true, ask Malawi. So what
have I done? What have I done? I've participated in many meetings to lobby for young people's participation in peacekeeping and peace building. We started in Angola, but here at the African Union, I've come and again. Mrs. Merinkos is now our chair for the Peace Commission in Malawi. And what we are doing in Malawi to involve young people to build those committees that can participate in mediation. And they did wonderful work during the elections in Malawi. So this is not just talk. We know that young people are not leaders of tomorrow, they are leaders of today. Number two, I myself have started a mentoring program. For many years, I've been sending people to school. Now I think we are counting 5,000 that have gone to university through the Joyce Banda Foundation. What I've started now, and 31 of them are in the US doing master's degrees in science subjects. But what I've done now is those that have graduated and are now working, we have built a network of those young leaders so that they are visible, so that when people appoint board members, I push those names so that they are appointed from there. Number three, those that saw me in office, they know that I took advantage of my position to appoint fellow young women to positions as ambassadors, as cabinet ministers. And the first Solicitor General in Malawi was not even 40 when she became Solicitor General, and she was a lady. So we're talking about real stuff. We are serious. I particularly am serious. I believe that young people on our continent are the future of this country, of this continent, but they have to start now. They must be engaged now. They must be given the opportunity now. Now, when I see young people on the road, on the streets, because they don't have water, they don't have electricity, they have no opportunity to go to school, and they are demonstrating. Sometimes the only person that joins them is me, because I know that you have real issues that needs to be paid attention to. And that's why I was saying my fellow leaders sitting in state houses, they need to be listening to young people. They are beckoning, they are calling, they are raising their voices. And if we ignore them, before we know it, they are in state house to take you out.
President Chisano. Well, some of the issues raised, I have touched a bit on them when I spoke earlier. One question related to the youth, that we have to start speaking and giving confidence to the youth, that we sent them to school, or they went to school by themselves to acquire knowledge. They should not be afraid of using that knowledge which we, or at least some of us, parents don't have. When they spoke to me about artificial intelligence, I asked myself, what is this artificial intelligence? It's something which happens out of the human intelligence. I said, it cannot be. That is thing which is made by man. And now it's called artificial intelligence, which may work by itself. No, the youth are mastering these technologies. They should not wait for those who don't know to tell them what to do. Instead, youth should come and be encouraged to come and speak, not come here and just put questions, but to come here with proposals, because they were sent to school to do what Edward Monjani went to do in school, sent by his mother. His mother said, go and acquire the witchcraft of the white man so that we be free. So we have to take the knowledge and make use of it. And you, the younger ones, are being equipped for that. Well, I am told when the Minister of Defense of my country was here, but he's no longer here. I want to ask him whether they have started to do away with papers in cabinet. They are now using these computers for sending documents, to discuss documents, and so on. I'm glad to hear that. But still, we are very far. As someone said here, we are not manufacturing those things. In Mozambique, the young people are decided to try and go one step forward. It's about now here you want things about leadership. You went behind me, ahead of me. I had noted that we cannot go out from here without speaking about this corruption. The need to fight against corruption. We need good governance. We can talk about everything, but if we don't have good governance and if we don't fight corruption, we will achieve nothing. And finally, to say that for these unconstitutional changes, for these man-made conflicts, I think the way to take is what, as I said, we have started doing in Mozambique, to start a dialogue, which I don't wish it to end. I want it to improve our way of being, to bring that new mentality so that everybody speak and criticize each other. And this accountability which you spoke about here, it's not only for among leaders of Africa, but inside the country, the accountability is very important. But among leaders, I think that we had a mechanism of, how do you call it? Peer review mechanism. I don't know whether it still works, but it was something which was well thought, but it was too slow, so that I don't know even how it ended in my country, because it was so. So we have to find ways of expediting this so that we actually are measuring ourselves friendly. It's not like going and interfering in the affairs of the others, but it's to exchange notes and try to find the best ways, best practices for enhancing our governance procedures.
Thank you, Minister.
I'll try to quickly respond to some of the questions that have been raised. With regard to urban renewal, what are we doing different, and is it across the country or just in Addis? Well, I'm happy to say that it's not just in Addis. In cities like Jijjiga, Harar, Gondar, Jimma, Adama, in many major urban centers in Ethiopia, there is a similar initiative. So it's not just Addis. And what is being done different? I think the most important and the initial step was in principle to decide and agree that we deserve something beautiful, something clean, that something healthy. Agreeing upon this, saying that this is important at the level of the leadership was the first important step, and then starting from small. Initially, it was just a few streets that were used as models, and then scaling it up to a very larger space. And most important thing I would say was a very driven approach, a very relentless pace. The municipal leadership, supported by the federal government, was assessing progress almost daily. The mayor would walk around the city, try to see the progress, and act not just as a mayor, but as a project manager as well, the entire municipal cabinet. This was very important, and in terms of mobilizing resources, relying not just on government budget, but mobilizing resources from the private sector and from the public at large, and learning from each step, trying to correct the missteps and trying to improve in the next phases of the project. I think that is what has worked in Addis, and that is the model that we're trying to apply in several cities across the country. With regard to our investment in the energy sector, the important thing, I think, the initial important step was having a very bold, ambitious vision and aspiration. And this goes back all the way to the time of Emperor Haile Selassie. Some of the designs for what has been built right now, it was initiated a long time ago, but there was continuity, support for these projects through successive governments. I think that was very important, and also prioritizing projects that are very relevant to the public at large. Flagship projects that the public could rally around, and then mobilizing resources for that domestically was very important. And right now we find ourselves in a position where we can export energy, electricity to most of our neighbors. Not to mean that we have become energy self-sufficient right now, but in a spirit of African solidarity, promoting infrastructure and economic integration with our neighbors. The final point that I want to make, I don't want to prescribe how we should select our leaders, but what I want to say is we have to be very conscious of the fact that leadership manifests itself in various spheres, various sectors, and celebrating and acknowledging leadership in the scientific sphere, in the business sphere, celebrating engineers, business women and men as leaders. Very often, when we talk about leadership, we think about our politicians, people in the cabinet, people in parliament, but for the locomotive of progress to move forward, we have to acknowledge and bring to the front the leadership of people across various sectors, and celebrating their achievement and giving emphasis to the importance of what they do is very critical. Thank you.
Friends, a professor came from Oxford to Congo, DR Congo, wanted to go to Brazzaville. It's the shortest air flight, 8 minutes. But the flight was gone, so the professor had missed his flight and found a young man sitting next to a dugout canoe. And in trying to make small conversation with the young man, he said, "Young man, do you know geology?" The young man says, "No, I'm just a simple fisherman." "Young man, do you know zoology, psychology?" The professor went through all the ologies, and the young man knew none of them. Then the young man said, the professor turns to the young man and said, young man, your life is going nowhere and you are sinking very fast if you don't know these scientific and other forms of knowledge. And after some time, and you know, there is just something about African mosquitoes. They are racist and they are xenophobic. Ask people in West Africa. That's why colonialism didn't fully work in West Africa. Because the mosquitoes did the Chibrenga coverage. Anyway, the professor started receiving emissaries, ancestral emissaries, in the form of mosquitoes. And so he was evidently uncomfortable. So the young man said, no, you know, professor, I have this dugout canoe. I take people across. You don't have to pay me since you've taught me geology, zoology, and etc. The professor agreed. And when they were in the middle of the river, I don't know what massaged the boat, it capsized. So both the professor and the boy were in the water. And the young man shouted to the professor and said, Professor, do you know swimology? The professor said, no. He said, then your life is sinking very fast. Friends, I hope what you've heard from this session is that there are social and economic determinants of peace, social and economic determinants of security. That what should never be said after another Tana is that the trees have changed, but the monkeys remain the same. That part of these conversations are for transformation. Now, there is a holding African leaders to account question. AU can do more. And I can see Ambassador Sheki and Ambassador Gambari and others looking at me. They have answered. All I wanted to say to my panelists, Madam President, Excellency, Comrade President, Minister Sir, Tana wouldn't be the same without this dialogue. But because you came, I promise you, we're going to take a free photo of you, and on account of what you have done, we're going to allow people to have a free lunch on your account. We've told them that all former African presidents are very rich, and so the bill will be sent to you. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank our eminent panel with a pom-pom. But also allow me to thank, I think in absentia, the chairperson of the African Union for his address. Please, let's give him a pom-pom. Allow me to thank the chairperson of the Tana Forum Board for the report. Friends, please stand up, stretch your legs for now. We're going to take, I think, a lunch break. If I'm wrong, I'll just announce after 2 minutes that you are not yet taking a break. But the lunch break will be short because I told a joke which took away 3 minutes of the lunch break. Thank you so much, Excellencies. Let's be back here in 30 minutes. Sorry, there is a group photo. Sorry. For the panel. Oh, sorry. The panelists, please join. Chairperson of the board, please join. Thank you, sir. Thank you.